ERCOT repeatedly assured the state and the public that ERCOT was prepared. Those assurances turned out to be false.
It's 2021 February. Texas facing the costliest disaster in its history. 246 lives lost, $195 billion in damages, which is 11% of the state's economy, and over 12 million people without the water. Grocery stores are empty, and 4.5 million homes and businesses are in the dark for days. Now, imagine this. What if half the cars in Texas were EVs? This catastrophe might have been avoided. But how? To answer that, we really need to understand what happened in Texas. This disaster was the Texas power crisis. A record-breaking winter storm dropped the temperatures to -19 Celsius, the coldest in 72 years. Texans cranked up their heating, pushing electricity demand to historical levels. But Texas energy infrastructure was not winterized. Power plants froze, generation plummeted, and the grid fell into the severe supply and demand imbalance. Isolated from the neighboring states, Texas couldn't import power. The result? Energy prices skyrocketed to $9,000 per megawatt hour, which is literally 180 times the usual rate, leaving the millions of people freezing. Here where EVs come in. In 2021, Texas had 24 million vehicles, but only 0.3% were EVs. If half had been EVs with bidirectional charging, their 850 gigawatt hour of battery capacity could have covered the 11-day power shortage and prevented the blackouts. In this video, we'll explore the grid balancing problem, solutions, and why EVs are the game changer for building a resilient energy systems. Let's break it down. The grid is a massive web of cables, carrying electricity from where it is generated to where it is needed. There are two main power sources: adjustable sources and unpredictable sources. Adjustable sources are like coal, gas, and nuclear, which can be ramped up or down to match demand. Unpredictable sources are like wind and solar, which rely on weather and need backup power to stay reliable. Here is the challenge. Demand and supply are constantly shifting. Equipment failures, extreme weather, and economic challenges can literally throw everything off. And add the complexity of renewables on top of it simply because their output is dependent on natural resources. So grid operators must keep supply and demand perfectly balanced every second. It's a tough job, and even with advanced forecasting, errors happen. Sometimes the grid is oversupplied, like when strong winds cause renewables to overproduce, and other times it's undersupplied, such as during cold snaps when demand spikes or wind stops blowing. To fix these imbalances, operators usually rely on batteries or the backup generators. As renewables grow, these problems are getting more and more common, so the need for better solutions. But you may probably ask, why does it matter so much to perfectly balance the grid? And the answer to that actually lies in the physics of electricity. And it all comes down to is frequency, the heartbeat of the grid. Electricity is created through electromagnetic induction. Spinning magnets inside coils of wire convert mechanical energy into electrical energy. The speed of that spinning sets the grid frequency, the number of cycles electricity flow per second. In North America, this frequency must stay precisely at 60 Hz to keep the system stable. Here's the challenge. The electricity that is being generated should always match whatever is being consumed. If too much is produced, turbines spin faster, pushing frequency up. If too little is generated, turbines slow down and the frequency drops. When the imbalance grows, stress on the grid increases, risking damage to equipment. To prevent this, safety systems automatically shut down power generators as a protective measure. But this shutdown can cascade, causing the blackout to spread even faster. In Texas, where the grid operates at 60 Hz, these imbalances are critical. If the frequency dips below 58.5 Hz or rises above 61.5 Hz, blackouts become almost unavoidable as the grid shuts down to protect itself. It is literally like a tightrope act, right? And just a little wobble can create so much stress on the system, and if this imbalance just grows, the entire system can fail. That's why grid balancing isn't just important, it's extremely critical. Now I'm sure you're curious and saying, how do you avoid the problem? There are three categories of solutions: demand-side solutions, supply-side solutions, and hybrid solutions. But it all starts with forecasting, and usually operators are trying to forecast demand and supply as accurate as they can to avoid the imbalance problem. With the revolution of AI, these forecasts have gotten really good, and it's very critical because 1% of error in forecast can actually cost tens of millions of dollars to the economy. AI analyzes real-time data, weather conditions, solar radiation, and satellite imagery. For renewables like solar and wind, it adjusts for short-term change, like a cloud passing over a solar farm, while long-term models predict broader trends. On the demand side, AI studies data from smart meters and sensors, looking at when people use high-energy appliances like air conditioners. It groups similar homes and even incorporates anonymized phone activity to refine predictions, updating every 30 minutes. But here is the twist. It is correct that the accuracy of AI in general has increased a lot in the recent years thanks to the technology improvements. But it's also true that this specific problem we're talking about right now, this grid imbalancing problem, it has gotten real worse in the recent years, which obviously raises a question why, right? And the answer is very simple. The reason is because in the last years, in the last decade, we've deployed a lot of solar and wind electricity sources, which obviously is very unpredictable in its output simply because of its nature. Because they're just simply dependent on natural resources. And our job now is even harder than you could have imagined simply because of the climate change. Because of the climate change, the weather patterns are very unpredictable, which makes it even harder to predict the output of wind and solar resources, which makes our supply and demand unpredictable. And the obvious question is how the grid operators deal with this problem. What are the solutions? When the grid is undersupplied, like it was during a Texas power crisis, for example, the go-to demand-side solution is demand response. This is basically a fancy way of asking people to use less electricity or shift their usage to other times. For example, factories might delay production to avoid peak hours. On the supply side, you can import electricity from other grids, except Texas can't because its grid is isolated. Another option is simply ramping up power plants like hydro or gas. But in Texas, a lot of those plants were literally frozen during the crisis thanks to the lack of winterization measures. Now flip the script. When the grid is oversupplied, demand response programs step in again. Businesses like data centers might temporarily ramp up operations to soak up the excess energy. Or you've got smart EV charging, where electricity cars charge during the times of surplus to take advantage of cheap electricity. On the supply side, one option is exporting surplus energy. But the most common and wasteful one is renewable curtailment. This means shutting down wind turbines or solar inverters because the grid cannot handle the extra power. In 2023, EU had to curtail 2 to 4% of its renewable electricity. That is clean energy just gone. Here's the hybrid solution, where things get interesting. Batteries. Grid-scale batteries can store excess energy when supply is high and discharge it when supply is low. If Texas had a robust battery system in 2021, it could have stored surplus energy and avoided its blackout. But here's the catch, which is a cost. The cost of batteries is extremely high, and it makes it literally very hard to deploy batteries all across the globe, which brings us to our alternative, which is EV cars. Today, EVs are basically smart batteries on wheels. Most can only charge, but with bidirectional charging technology, they can also discharge energy back into the grid. That turns them into a massive decentralized battery network. Here's why this matters. Let's say you are an EV owner in Texas. If you use smart charging, plugging in during low-cost periods, you could save about $90 a year. But with bidirectional charging, you are looking at potential earnings of $3,000 annually. Yeah, you heard it right, $3,000 annually. Imagine a company called GreenPlay operating in Texas. GreenPlay manages thousands of bidirectional EVs, all connected to its central system. Here's how it works. GreenPlay regularly collects real-time data to know when your car is in use and when it's free. Over time, its AI learns your behavior, when you will need your car and how much charge you will require. Maybe it knows you'll always need a full charge by 7 a.m. At the same time, the AI tracks the behavior of every other EV in its network, calculating the available battery capacity across its fleet at any given time. GreenPlay also monitors real-time grid data. If there is an oversupply, it charges idle EVs to absorb excess electricity and take advantage of low prices. If there is an undersupply, it discharges idle EVs back into the grid to fill the gap and sell electricity at higher prices. So instead of sitting unused, all of these cars' batteries help stabilize the grid collectively. Now, scale this up. Imagine thousands of companies like GreenPlay operating across Texas, creating a massive distributed battery network that eliminates the need for expensive grid-scale batteries. And here is the best part. For grid operators, the cost is effectively zero. And the situation for EV owners is a win-win. While your car is being parked, it's making money, and whenever you need it, it has enough battery for you to make use of. EV cars are skyrocketing in popularity in general, but 99% of those cars still lack bidirectional charging capabilities. By 2030, California alone is expected to have 6.3 million EVs. If those cars had bidirectional charging, they could add 40 gigawatts of grid capacity, nearly matching California's highest ever electricity demand of 52 gigawatts. Compare that to the US 2023 utility scale battery capacity of just 11 gigawatt, and you see the staggering potential of EVs to transform grid resilience. The potential here isn't just big, it's a game-changing. Bidirectional EV charging is gaining attraction as a key tool to stabilize the grid and reduce the energy costs. California is leading the way with their early policies. Globally, Australia had cleared key regulatory barriers, expecting the EV cars with bidirectional capabilities to be operational by the end of 2024, while key automakers like Ford, BMW, and Honda are collaborating on a ChargeScape initiative to integrate the bidirectional EV cars all across North America. And practical applications are already in action. We're seeing in Auckland, for example, the electric school buses providing surplus energy back to the grid. Here's the thing. The Texas blackout was not just a disaster, it was a wake-up call, revealing the vulnerabilities of our energy systems, pushing us to rethink about our daily lives, such as our cars, for example. The car parked in your driveway should not only be about taking us to places, but it can also be about stabilizing the grid, making money for you, helping your community, and most importantly, saving lives by avoiding disasters. Potential is massive and the technology is ready. And the question is not how we can make this happen, but it's more like how soon we will start.